Welcome back to another episode of the Casey Campbell Podcast. Casey Campbell with you, of course. We are pleased to be joined once again by the MHSAA Executive Director, Mark Ewell. Mark, congratulations on celebrating your 100th year of operation. Something we really didn't get a chance to talk about yet. But what was it like to have all the celebrations as you guys conclude your 100th year in operation?
It was really cool. Yeah, 100 years is a long time for any organization to be doing anything. We got our start back in December of 1924. December 13th actually was the date a group of coaches got together and they were going to plan a very small basketball tournament that happened in February of 1925. So hard to believe. You fast forward 100 years and that's what we celebrated. If folks still go to our website, you'll find the amount of trivia in research that some of our staff members did is incredible. I think folks that go to MHSAA.com, you'll find some things of your local interest, but yet you'll also see some stories and some information on kids who were all over the state. We've had some incredible student athletes come through here over the last century, and yeah, it was great to kind of look back and reflect. And we're also excited about next year and starting the second century of school sports with year 101.
Yeah. Well, there is I know the next century of the MHSA will have some brand new things this year. Coming up as you guys debut two new sports into there for the first time since 2005. Of course, with boys volleyball will be debuting in spring 2026, and then this fall, girls field hockey will debut. Now, obviously, field hockey and boys volleyball have been around a couple years, but this will be the first time that this will be an MHSA sanctioned sport. They'll get a mitten and all that other fun stuff that comes with all the other sports that, of course, that you guys sponsor. But how exciting is it to welcome two new sports in?
Yeah, it'll be the first two new sports we've added now in over 20 years, so that's exciting. Ironically, Casey, talking about the 100th, you go back and read some of the earliest documents and meeting minutes of the MHSAA from 1924, 1925, and 1926. One of the sports that got an incredible amount of conversation about should we have it or not was field hockey. And so kind of ironic, a mere 101 years later, it finally becomes a sponsored sport in the MHSAA. Volleyball will be very straightforward. Schools already sponsor the sport for girls in the fall. So in terms of equipment, logistics, tournament schedule, we're planning boys volleyball will start in two divisions. So we'll kind of have a bigger school division and then a smaller school division, and then girls field hockey, which will be played this coming fall. That's going to start in just one division. So it'll be all the schools that play field hockey, which right now is just under 50. They're going to play out their season, and then that will end with crowning a champion in late October. So, no, good to have those two sports fully on board, and we're ready to go.
Have you had facilities locked down for those two places?
So we're getting close to getting a finals site for field hockey. We'd love to be at one of our Big Ten universities who has a dedicated field hockey setup. Of course, the challenges that come with that is it's hard to host a field hockey state championship game when it also potentially could fall on a home Big Ten football Saturday. So we're still trying to kind of manage and massage the schedules, and so we should have something to officially announce for field hockey here very, very shortly. And then volleyball, we're just going to stay with the girls model. Again, putting both our girls finals will remain in Battle Creek at Kellogg Arena. And then our two divisions of semis and finals next spring for the boys will also be in the Cereal City Kellogg Arena, which is downtown Battle Creek. So excited about both. Again, we're kind of now in, if this was a Major League Baseball game, we're in probably the bottom of the eighth or the ninth inning of really having all the details squared away, and it'll be here before we know it.
There's also some more things that could be also on the horizon, of course, where so you talk about state finals, and I know that there will be a new home for the ones that used to air on over the air TV, or I mean the proper term should be statewide TV, I should say. for football, boys and girls basketball. So I know there's a new home, but there's also a new way to access those things.
There is. So I'm gonna, I've been in this business now for 30 years. I'm right around 50, so I'm showing my age, and people my age still like to consume our sports on television. So that far and away would have been the number one option for us to keep going. So the changes that we've seen with Fox Sports Detroit, which then became Bally Sports Detroit, which has now become FanDuel TV. Challenge number one is our contract came to an end. Challenge number two, because FanDuel Sports Network, they are still emerging from bankruptcy. So they were no longer willing or interested in putting together a product that was not going to be a moneymaker for them. And forever, our state championships of what the production costs were versus what they were taking in advertising revenue, those were break even deals at best. Now, the fortunate thing is when it was Fox Detroit and Bally's, we had the same folks that we had worked with for years and years and years, lived in Michigan. Their kids played high school sports in Michigan. So there was a personal loyalty to keeping our games on. New folks in charge now. Again, you've kind of, if anybody's followed the Tigers, lots of new faces on those broadcasts in terms of the pregame, postgame, and I can also tell you that behind the camera, in terms of their production staff and management, lots and lots of turnover. And so, we decided to really part as friends. Again, there were no hard feelings. And Casey, the other part of it is currently FanDuel Sports Network is on a higher cable tier. So, for example, most people that have cable television in our office, you can't watch the Tigers right now because FanDuel is on a higher level in the sports tier. So for us to put all this effort into finding a way to make this keep working with FanDuel when a smaller and smaller percentage of our folks have that on their cable system to begin with, we started to look at some other options, and where we landed is the NFHS network. That's the place where our games are during the regular season. It's the only place where our games are in all the preliminary rounds of our tournament. And so again, if someone's buying that monthly pass or that yearly subscription, it will cost you nothing additional or extra to also watch our 11 player championship games. It's been the network that's been the home for our 8-player finals the last several years. And so folks who check that out one weekend will just do the same thing come Thanksgiving weekend. That's also where the Selection Sunday show will be as well. We'll be on the network. The nice thing with it being on our network is we'll actually, I think, be able to have the selection show earlier in the day on Sunday, because I'm putting on my old high school football coach's hat of nearly 20 years ago. The challenge with a 6 o'clock or a 7 o'clock selection show was great, but as a coach, we got film to watch. We got video to access and exchange. And, the later that show is on Sunday, the shorter that work week. So if we can do something mid to late afternoon on that selection Sunday, we might even peek at when the Lions are playing on that Sunday and try and find a window. If they're in the 4 o'clock game, is it just before that half hour, just before the Lions come on, or if they're playing the 1 o'clock game, do we put that right at the end? Again, we're thinking about some creative things that will make some good lead-ins. And this will also be, Casey, where both our basketballs will be. So boys and girls, which right now our finals in basketball have been on FanDuel, but the 16 semifinal games that were played on Thursday and Friday at the Breslin Center, those have already been on the network. So for our viewers who have been using the network for a long, long time, almost no change whatsoever. Again, it's those folks that have really relied on their cable systems in past years. That'll be the change. But we're excited about the possibilities. The one thing, Casey, I am thrilled about is with our football finals, with us being on our own network. If you're going to the games, you ask anybody who goes to a pro or college game, what's the worst part about the in-stadium experience currently? And it's media and television timeouts. And the one thing with us now putting our products on our own network, there will be no commercials. And so now that in-stadium experience for our teams and our fans inside Ford Field, no more TV timeouts. And so the game will have a much better flow and pace. And that again is just one of the not a big thing, but to football people, on-field football people, that is a pretty big thing. And that's just one of the benefits here in the change of course.
Yeah. So so obviously now with it being on a new network and stuff like that, now you have to find people that the behind the scenes people, the people that you're going to put on the air. Have you figured that process out? I know obviously you also, and I'll get to something else related to that in a minute, but in terms of finding on air people, where are we at there?
So I think the production value, the greatest thing that we've had now for years with whether it was Fox or Bally's or FanDuel is the production of our high school events, Casey, and correct me if you have a different opinion. I always thought the quality was doggone near, maybe not a pro level, but certainly is what you would expect watching a college game
Yeah.
in terms of the number of cameras and replay opportunities and just the whole presentation. And so we don't think that that will take a step back. So we're very, very pleased with the plan we're going to have in place for the actual production. And do know that a lot of the familiar faces and voices that have been our on-air talent, those folks are all independent contractors when it comes to that kind of stuff. So Fox or Bally's or FanDuel would hire those folks by the game or for the weekend. And so we'll have some announcements to make shortly, but I think our viewers will recognize a lot of the same faces and voices with us now going to the network, and we're really excited about that as well. So yes, it's going to be different, but there's also going to be a lot of things about the production that will feel just like that, to use old Mr. Rogers, that comfortable sweater. You're probably too young to even get that reference, but
No, I got it. No,
the
I got it.
comfortable sweater, that
Yep,
comfortable pair of
yep,
shoes
yep.
with some of the faces and voices you'll hear on the telecast next year, that part will feel like nothing has changed.
I may be young, but I do get some of these references. Um, I also know that I know your partners, state champs, have also
Yep.
made some big announcements as well, and they're also going to be stepping up their events as well, and they've also partnered with Local 4 here in Detroit.
Yeah, they actually, I think, televised the high school football coaches all-star game.
Yep.
We're talking on June 24th, just the previous night. And so we have a very good relationship with state champs. We've had a few visits with WDIV, and we'll certainly kind of look at all this as time goes on about the right partnerships. And I think if nothing else, Casey, what college sports has taught us over the last 18 months is that television right now in sports is a very quickly changing and evolving place. And so I think that, long-term commitments and long-term plans, it's almost back to the COVID days. You've got to be nimble and you've got to be able to pivot pretty quickly. But,
Yeah.
we're excited about going to the NFHS network currently. I also think for a lot of our fans and viewers, all the content now that State Champs has with WDIV, their reach only gets bigger and better, which is a great thing for high school sports in Michigan. And we'll just see how all this plays out in the future.
Absolutely. You mentioned the college game, and obviously, I know everyone's been paying attention to what's been going on over there. And obviously, the most recent ruling by the courts um, about with in regards to college athletes. I want to get your thoughts on that. Just how do you think that is? What is that going to look like? And because many people say it may just trickle down to this level.
Um, I don't see all of it certainly trickling down to this level. I think we've already seen a pretty quick course correction, right?
Right.
We saw all of the conference realignment, and
Yeah.
it was all based on TV and media rights dollars. And
Right.
this is why we're going to end up now with four big leagues rather than five. And no longer does geography really matter. And this is what we're going to do. And Casey, it's now just been 1 year of these mega conferences. And now every school has to figure out how to get $20.5 million in one bucket to pay their student athletes. And by the way, Casey, now what they're doing at the same time is almost every athletic department, at least in the Big Ten, are cutting staff. because what they've now realized is, okay, all the media rights money, well, a good chunk of that has to now go to paying our student athletes directly. So they're cutting staff. They're cutting support staff folks within departments and within each sport. And I think what they're also going to learn here in a few years is it is not feasible for the Oregon or Washington track teams to be competing in April at Rutgers in Maryland. You know, football travels, we play one game a week. Most football teams at that level are on the road on average every other week. So in football, it works. Some of the folks that I've got connections with in the Big Ten level with basketball, they said this past season, in terms of travel and kids being in class, was a complete train wreck. And now those sports that play more often in our smaller generating in terms of revenue sports, that model is not sustainable. So you asked about what the future looks like. I think we probably end up at some point with a mega college football league. I don't know if that's 2 divisions, 4 divisions, but I see college football at some point doing their own thing, maybe even men's basketball, and then all other sports. There has to be a pivot back to things being somewhat regional. You can't expect non-revenue sports to be flying teams all over the country, coast to coast, Rutgers to UCLA and every place in between, where that's going to be sustainable. It's also, I think, smart why we've gone very, very slowly in the whole world of NIL, because as this has continued to evolve over the last few years at the college level, lots of people that work in our schools look at that and say that's the last thing we want to be like. Because now really NIL, while there now be some individual opportunities for individual kids, with kids now being paid directly, a lot of NIL was set up at the college level really to get around the rules. And it'll be curious to see now that the rules have changed so drastically, where NIL exactly fits. So still some more dust to be settled, but at least with the NCAA settlement, I feel like college sports can at least move forward. However, they're going to have to navigate Title IX lawsuits. I don't know how you can take $20.5 million in public universities and public funds and think that you're somehow not subject to Title IX. Stay tuned. A lot more dust that has to settle here.
Okay, so let's go to more things that could affect you guys. I know there's always sport changes and all that other stuff. What are some other things that could be on the horizon for the MHSA in terms of changes that people will definitely notice within the sports they play?
So, certainly as we talked about our television deals and in our two probably highest profile sports of football and basketball, with the two new additional sports coming on. And of course, when you add a couple of sports, you then get others that want to also be included. Flag football then comes up very, very quickly. The NFL has really made this a priority. They're spending money. I think, we had a handful of schools that participated in an event down at Ford Field a few weeks ago. Where I get super jealous when it comes to Ford Field is the perfect season for girls flag football, just in terms of participation numbers. If there was a season where they could use a girls non-cut big roster size sport, it's in the winter. So I get super jealous because a lot of my colleagues in the South, when do they play flag football? It's a winter sport, which is perfect. You talk to our fall coaches and spring coaches of our existing sports, and there is not strong support for flag football because they really think that that's going to take numbers away from current offerings in both the fall and the spring. So we'll see how all that plays out. Certainly with it being in the Olympics coming up, the pressure will build, not diminish, in terms of adding that. And the key thing is we just want to get feedback from our schools to answer the question, do you want us to add it? And if you do, then what's the right season?
We talked about girls flag football, and I know that you said on this during a past interview that we had it won't be 20 years until we add another sport.
Nope, that's still true.
What are some of the things that possibly could be added?
So that's one. Water polo is a sport that we haven't had great growth, but that aquatics community is very, very loyal. So that would be potentially adding a boys and a girls sport. So water polo is going to continue to get a look. And then a sport that gets a lot of good debate is what would a very short indoor track and field season look like? a season that would go January, February, because every time we turn around, Casey, it seems like another school is building either an indoor turf building or an indoor track and field type building. And so the access to facilities, I think, is only going to grow. And that's just something else that right now is getting a lot of talk and conversation.
Absolutely. When when you look at different rule changes and stuff like that, because I know that basketball has talked about seeding, and I know the hockey thing is possibly going to two divisions. Where are we at in terms of more of the just different rule changes in all these other sports?
So from a playing rule standpoint, last year we seeded every basketball team in the district, just like we now do with all hockey teams in the regional, and that seemed to be good because if the seats hold, then your best games at the district in basketball all happen on Friday night. Hockey's an interesting sport because we're seeing a lot of the high schools that had their own standalone program no longer able to do that. So we're seeing more and more cooperative programs where groups of two or more schools combine together to have a combined team. It's already changed the way we make our three divisions in hockey, and is the number of individual teams decreases and the number of co-ops increases. Actually, our Hockey Coaches Association are very interested in pressing the conversation forward of going from three to two divisions. High school hockey, I think that the high end of it, the talent in our state, it's never been stronger. The problem is, and you know this, Casey, that with high school hockey, it's some of our schools being able to have their own team depends on whether or not they have a goalie. To where a lot of the co-ops, where if you go 3 or 4 years and there's just not a goaltender in your program, that's what's driving a lot of these co-op things. So our hockey committee is very, very busy right now talking through a lot of those scenarios.
Do you think we could see something with that? Maybe probably nothing for this year, but
Nope, nothing for this year, but our hockey community will discuss that once again. Now, do you know they've got 2 more regular season games that is for this coming year in hockey? Just because in hockey, that's a sport that makes zero sense to have scrimmages. So what we've really done is we've kind of because if you're going to pay for the ice, you want to be able to charge admission, and you just want to have a game. And also by increasing the number of games, we're hoping that kids who are on the fence of do I play with my high school team or do I play non-school hockey, we're trying to make that decision tougher and tougher. So excited about what the upcoming hockey season will look like.
yeah, for sure. And then just to wrap things up, what are we going to expect for the fall, or any possible changes coming there?
So year 101, like I said, what folks will recognize is field hockey being that new sport. Next year is also the year where our winter tournaments will all end a week earlier, most of them from what they traditionally have. So we'll really see our winter season coming to an end by mid-March, which is something that our schools wanted, given spring breaks have moved earlier. Got some interesting lighting going on there, Casey. And
Yeah.
then come in the spring, we'll see boys volleyball. So yeah, kind of ironic that here as we start that second century, 2 new sports come on, and no, we're excited about what the future holds.
All right. Well, Mark, thank you so much for coming on and talking with us, and congrats on year 100, and looking forward to year 101.
Thanks, Casey. Good to be with you.